Quickly, Spencer unplugs the machine, but their bodies begin to be sucked into the video game. The first to arrive in the forest is Spencer, who is terrified to realize that he has replaced all his hair with large muscles. Then his 3 colleagues show up and can barely recognize each other in their new bodies. Spencer then realizes that they have all been transformed into the avatars they chose for the game, and he is now Dr. Smolder Bravestone, a great archaeologist and explorer. Anthony has been transformed into Moose Finbar. Martha is now Ruby Roundhouse, and Bethany despairs when she realizes that she has been transformed into a short, chubby professor named Shelley Oberon. Looking at their wrists, the members of the new team realize that they have a tattoo. While Professor Shelley freaks out trying to find an explanation for what is happening, a gigantic hippopotamus sneaks up behind him and devours him. Startled, the other players believe that Bethany's journey has come to an end, but are surprised when they see the body of her avatar falling from the sky. Just then, the hippopotamus reappears and begins chasing them. As they flee, the players are supported by Nigel Billingsley, who gives them a ride away. During the trip, the driver informs them that Jumanji is in danger and that group has been chosen to remove the curse that surrounds that world. Nigel says that all the details of the mission are in the letter he sent to Dr. Bravestone and asks him to read it aloud. Nigel, the Jumanji guide, has been hired by Professor Russell Van Pelt to lead an expedition in search of the legendary Jaguar Temple, which houses the sacred Jumanji jewel. After years of research, Professor Van Pelt finally found the whereabouts of the jewel and decided to steal it for himself. Legend has it that the Jaguar watches over Jumanji, and anyone who dares to blind him will be consumed by a dark power. After taking possession of the jewel, Van Pelt took control of all the creatures of Jumanji, and a terrible curse fell upon that land. Nigel begged the man to return the stone, but once he possessed it, he could no longer part with it. So the guide waited until everyone was asleep before he went into action and took the jewel. Now he hands it over to Dr. Bravestone, in the hope that he and his friends can return it to the temple and put an end to the curse. The explorer also receives the map of Jumanji and must go to the bazaar to find the missing piece. To ensure that the stone is safe, Spencer asks Anthony to keep it in his backpack, and the group discovers that Bethany's avatar is the only one capable of reading the map, as she possesses the skill of cartography. In this instant, Spencer becomes curious about his own abilities and finds a way to access them. He discovers that in addition to being strong, fast, and fearless, his character has no weaknesses whatsoever. Martha is a martial arts expert and her greatest weakness is venom. Bethany is a cartologist, archaeologist, and paleontologist who has little physical resistance. Finally, Anthony is a great zoologist and assistant who has very little strength, speed, and cannot eat cakes. Just when everything seems as strange as possible, Jumanji continues to surprise and the quartet begins to be chased by armed bikers. They must escape in order not to be eliminated, and during the escape, Martha discovers how to use her skills. When Bethany is in danger, the fighter runs towards the biker and knocks him out with a kick to the chest. Spencer and Anthony hide together and the explorer asks his assistant to give him one of his weapons. When he reaches into his backpack, the first thing the zoologist finds is a boomerang, which Spencer uses to try to attack his enemies. When they realize that the plan didn't work, the duo continue on the run and are surprised to see the boomerang returning to eliminate each of their pursuers. Seconds later, new rebels appear and Spencer must flee with his friend on his back, since Anthony's avatar is the slowest of all. During their escape, the group becomes surrounded and is faced with a dead end. The only option now is to jump into the waterfall, with the hope of surviving the fall. Believing that their targets have been eliminated, the bikers leave, but the quartet manages to return to the surface safe and sound. Martha then breaks the sad news that she has been shot and her body disappears. The next minute, the girl returns, but the tattoo on her wrist reveals that she has only 2 lives left. If one of the characters uses up all their lives, the game will come to an end for him. Rushing to find the missing piece of the map, the group rushes to reach the village on the other side of the mountain. In a remote jungle location, Van Pelt's soldiers reveal that they have lost their target, and he says he will summon all the creatures of that world to find them. On the way to cross the mountain, Spencer and Anthony discuss their old friendship, and the basketball player is furious when he remembers that, because of that nerd, he is in danger of losing his place on the team, since the fraud in his homework has been discovered. After an argument, the zoologist loses his mind and ends up pushing the boy off a cliff, causing Spencer to lose one of his lives. Not satisfied, when he returns, Anthony begins to slap him, but his blows have no effect. Furious, Spencer attacks him back and, even after all that has happened, saves his friend who was about to fall off a cliff on his own. Hours later, they arrive at a village full of people and pause for a snack. Believing the merchant to be selling various types of bread, Anthony devours them to satisfy his hunger and discovers that he has just eaten a piece of cake. He freaks out in fear of what might happen as a result of his weakness, and suddenly his body explodes. When he returns, he falls on top of some merchandise and ends up destroying everything around him. Suddenly, a boy approaches Dr. Bravestone and his group and says that he will take them to the place where they need to go. After guiding them to a tent, the young man states that the object they are looking for is inside that basket, but the team must be very careful to get it. Suspicious, Bravestone approaches the object and, upon removing the lid, discovers that there is a snake inside. Upon seeing the animal, Moose Finbar states that this is a black mamba, whose venom is totally deadly. They create a plan to distract the snake, but the black mamba quickly attacks them and strikes at Martha. At that moment, Pencer springs into action and manages to grab it. Anthony takes advantage of the fact that the snake is immobilized to rip off its fangs, rendering the animal useless. Now, without its main fighting weapon, the snake leaves and Bethany checks what is inside the basket. To his surprise, the missing piece of the map is not there, but a small sculpture in the shape of an elephant. On the paper that wrapped it is an advice that says, "When you see me, start climbing." Confused, the group decides to leave and ends up being seen by other new bikers. They try to escape, but are eventually surrounded, and Spencer uses all of Bravestone's skills to get rid of his pursuers, opening a gap so that his team can escape. Everything seemed to be under control until Van Pelt appears and shoots in the air in an attempt to get the attention of his former partner, Dr. Bravestone. Just as the quartet was about to be captured, a black smoke emerges to throw Van Pelt and his men off guard, and a masked boy guides them away from there, using a culvert as a passage. Alex, who is in the body of aviator Jefferson McDonough, asks the group to follow him and guides them, among the traps, to get through the tunnel. After crossing all those deadly traps, the group comes out in the middle of the jungle and Alex takes them to his hideout. There, they drink margaritas and the quartet discovers that Alan Parrish was the guy who built that place. Alex reveals that he believes he has been in the game for a few months, because in Jumanji time passes in a totally different way. He could not complete the mission and leave that world because his abilities do not allow him to pass the transport shed. The boy tried to get past the second stage twice and ended up dying each time. Then, when he reached his last life, he realized that he could never get out of that place alone. At this point, the team discovers that Alex is the missing piece of the map, for only the boy can guide them to the second stage of the game. When they arrive at the transport shed, the young man reveals that the plan is to steal a vehicle, cross a canyon, and get to the Jaguar statue. However, the big problem is that that place is guarded by dozens of armed soldiers. So, the first thing they need to do is distract those guys so they can break in. Bethany then asks Martha to use all her charm to attract the soldiers' attention and teaches her how to distract them. While everyone is hiding behind a rock, waiting for Martha to do her job, Alex starts saying some rather old-fashioned slang for today and Spencer asks when he got sucked into the game. In this way, they discover that the boy arrived in Jumanji in 1996, which means that he has been there for more than 20 years. Spencer asks if Alex is Mr. Vreek's son and, upon finding out who he really is, reveals that 2 decades have passed in the real world. Upon receiving this news, Alex is in a state of shock, but still gathers strength to continue the mission. While Martha struggles to distract the soldiers, the rest of the team storms the base and searches for the most suitable vehicle to cross the gorge. While walking between the motorcycles, Anthony accidentally knocks them over, causing a loud noise that is eventually heard by the guards. At this point, Martha uses all her fighting skills to attack them and gives them a good thrashing. She then goes to the shed and gathers with her friends. While everyone is celebrating the young woman's victory, Anthony spots the approaching bikers and rushes his team to get the hell out of there. Quickly, the 5 adventurers get into the helicopter and Alex takes them away. Seeing their targets trying to escape, the bikers attack them using missiles and the propeller is hit. During the crash, the pilot tries to stabilize the aircraft, but is unable to climb, as one of the parts has been damaged. To make matters worse, they enter a valley where they are chased by dozens of carnivorous rhinos. During the escape, Spencer climbs into the helicopter in an attempt to fix the propellers, and just as they were about to crash into a mountain, Alex manages to take off. Just then, while everyone is celebrating, Anthony realizes that the jewel from Jumanji that was in his backpack has just been lost by falling into the valley. So the group returns to look for it and notices that, for some very strange reason, the rhinos are protecting the stone so that they don't get it back. After apologizing to Anthony, Spencer knocks him into the valley and uses his friend as bait to lure those monsters. In this way, he manages to retrieve the jewel and waits for the zoologist to be eliminated to take it back when it falls from the sky. As they land on dry land, far from all threats, the group celebrates the success of their mission, but the joy comes to an end when Alex is bitten by a mosquito, which is his greatest weakness. Desperate to save him, Bethany begins to perform mouth-to-mouth breathing on the boy and thus gives him one of her lives. Later, the young woman notices that Alex is feeling a little down and decides to go talk to him. The young man is worried about his parents and imagines the suffering they have been through all these years. In another corner of the jungle, Martha and Spencer go out to get water and the nerd declares his love for the girl, saying that he has been in love with her since the 7th grade at school. To his surprise, Spencer discovers that Martha is also into him, and they both kiss in the most bizarre way possible, since neither of them have any experience in it. Anthony then shows up to scold them and claims to have found the jaguar. The statue is a few miles away and Bethany uses the map to guide her friends there. It is already night when they find the trail and Spencer asks his assistant to give him the jewel. At that moment, a path surrounded by torches appears in the middle of the forest, and all the group has to do is follow it. The boy knows that is a trap and Bethany remembers the note she found along with the elephant sculpture. Believing that it is too dangerous to go that way, Bravestone decides to use his exploring skills to climb the trees, but ends up falling when he is startled by a squirrel. When he hits the ground, the adventurer is devoured by a giant feline and Anthony realizes that the place is surrounded by jaguars. When he returns, Spencer calls Anthony for a private talk and confesses that he is completely terrified. Now that he has only one more life, the boy claims that he will not be able to complete the mission, but Anthony manages to encourage him by saying that in the real world, we all have only one life and what really matters is how we choose to live it. When the team stops to think of a plan to get to the other side, the bikers approach and they decide to split up. While Martha attacks the soldiers, Alex distracts the jaguars so Spencer can steal a motorcycle and get to the mountain faster. When pursued by the jaguars, the explorer uses a flamethrower to trap them in a circle of fire and continues on his way. On the other side of the jungle, Bethany is walking alone through the forest when she is attacked, but the feline gives up devouring him and returns to its master. Anthony must face a gigantic elephant and discovers that he has the ability to communicate with animals. When Spencer arrives at his destination, he finds Van Pelt pointing a gun at Bethany. The man states that if Bravestone does not return the jewel, he will blow his friend's brains out. Then Martha and Alex show up and are surrounded by Van Pelt's pets. Just as Bethany was about to be eliminated, Spencer reveals that he is not with the stone. Suddenly, Anthony appears riding an elephant with the jewel in his hands. Immediately, the felines run to attack him, but decide to run away when they are thrown far away. Realizing that he is alone in that battle, the villain tries to shoot the zoologist, but Bethany manages to stop him. The elephant then runs away scared, and accidentally Anthony ends up throwing the jewel away. While Alex and Bethany try to immobilize the enemy, Martha asks Spencer to climb the statue and states that she will deliver the jewel to him. However, when she finds the stone, she realizes that the place is surrounded by poisonous snakes and tries to pass through them unnoticed. When the young woman finally manages to get the jewel, Van Pelt appears and controls the snakes to attack Martha if she refuses to hand over the stone. Seeing Spencer approaching the top, the girl decides to use her weakness to her advantage and steps on a snake to get bitten. In this way, the poison causes her to die immediately and fall from the sky. Before she hits the ground, the young woman manages to hand the jewel to Spencer and he puts it in the eye of the jaguar. However, contrary to expectations, nothing happens when the adventurers manage to accomplish their mission and they go into despair. At this point, Bethany remembers the words of Nigel, the guide, and remembers that after inserting the jewel in its proper place, they must shout the word, Jumanji, to complete the mission. As they do so, that entire universe is restored and Van Pelt is swept from the surface along with his venomous serpents. Minutes later, Nigel arrives on the scene and congratulates the adventurers for being able to lift the curse. The guide thanks them and says that this is where they say goodbye. Nigel asks to shake Alex's hand and the boy's body disappears. The same goes for Bethany and Anthony, but when it's Martha's turn, Spencer tries to convince her to stay in the game along with him. The boy really likes his new body and the skills he has, so he does not want to give it up. However, Martha refuses to stay in that place and asks Spencer to go home so they can be together. So the boy says goodbye to his avatar, Dr. Bravestone, and says he is ready to go home. Everyone is very happy to be back, but wonders where Alex is, since he has not shown up at school along with the rest of the team. The quartet then walks to Mr. Vreek's house, imagining that Alex might be there, and realize that the haunted house looks totally different. Incredibly, Alex is 20 years older and already has a family. The man takes his wife and children to visit his father and arrives at the same time that his old team goes looking for him. Upon seeing the four youngsters, Alex recognizes them and goes to talk to them. He explains that when they reached the end of the game, he was sent back to 1996. Bethany tries to hide her disappointment when she sees that the guy she fell in love with is grown up and has a family, but is happy when Alex reveals that his daughter is also named Bethany. He says that even after all these years, he has never forgotten the person who saved his life. A few weeks have passed and the four friends are still together. Since the day they left that game, they have never been apart again. Martha and Spencer still haven't talked about what happened in Jumanji, but the boy decides to put his shyness aside and go talk to her. The couple then have their first kiss in real life, and to ensure that no one is ever sent to that game again, the group decides to get rid of him once and for all.